Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hitstreak. I am your man, Nick Hyder. And folks, I've got an extra special treat for you. Joining me in the Hit Lab today, this dude's back actually as a guest for the second time right here on the Hitstreak, folks. So check it out. All right, you have seen this dude on Jimmy Kimmel Live. He's been featured on Good Morning America multiple times, in the Nashville Business Journal multiple times. He's been featured in the Bowler's Journal, and he's the guest on episode 62 of the Hitstreak. Folks, he's a Guinness World Record holder. He's the host of the Charge Forward podcast, right? He is a business coach, and he's the owner of Charge Forward Solutions. You know him as the backwards bowler, my man, Jim Cripps. How we doing, baby?
I'm excellent. Thanks for having me back. It's good to be back here in the studio with you on the Hitstreak. And it's not on accident that you repeat. It could be on accident that you get on once, but you repeat. That's where it's at, right?
That's right. That's right. That means like any you can't have too much of a good time, can you, Jim?
That's right. I love it.
You can't have too much of a good time. So check it out, folks. If you're watching with us today, you're probably wondering, where is the rest of Jim Cripps coming with us today? All right, Jim. Like, oh my gosh, man, you take up about half the seat that you took up last time that you sat in there on episode 62. Congratulations. Tell me about your weight loss journey, man.
Thanks, man. It's been a journey. I was a big guy from age 6 on, and you can accidentally take up more of this seat. You got to take up less on purpose. And so it's been very focus driven, even including having my knees fixed. Traveled to Honduras last year and had stem cell therapy done on my knees by one of the former head physicians for the Olympics. And so anyway, it's just been a big process. And I encourage anybody out there to, no matter how busy you are, no matter how many things are being thrown at you, grab a hold of your health and fix it. Whatever it is that you're struggling with, whatever it is that you don't like or that you need to improve, get after it.
I couldn't have said it any better. I didn't know about the stem cell thing, and it's one of my buddies, Ed Clay, is an innovator and an industry leader in that, and I'm actually going to be interviewing him next week, which I'm really excited about. Right, so tell me about the stem cell. Like that's something that you hear a lot about these days, but not a lot of folks know exactly what it is. Right, so tell me what it did for you.
Sure. So I was in a situation where just because I was so heavy for so long, my knees were wearing out. And so I had knee pain for about 5 years every day, just trying to figure out how to cope through that. And I had started losing weight, getting my health under control, but that was holding me back. And then one day in the gym, I was going from a cardio straight into a lifting session and turned wrong on my right knee. And it kind of derailed the process because it hurt so bad. And so I really, was looking for somebody to help fix my knees. All the things out there that most people look at is knee replacement. And I was trying to figure out how to have my own parts. So I went down, bought a ticket to the biohacking conference that was in Orlando at that time, and was on a mission to find somebody to help me fix my knees. And as luck turned out, I found somebody that was going through a merger and needed help with the merger. Of course, that gave me an opportunity to learn more about them and learn about their clinic. Turns out Virgil Herring, Brant Snedeker's old coach.
That's right.
So Brant had his shoulder fixed by the same company, same clinic. And so there was a little bit of a connection there.
Okay.
And so I got more comfortable with it. Went down to Honduras there in Roatan and was there for a week.
That ain't too bad.
Ain't too bad. The one caveat, though, is it's kind of like getting braces. So, with braces, your teeth move a little bit at a time. When they fill those joints up with your stem cells, they move it all at once. And so on day 4, when I flew back to the States, that was probably the first day I could have gotten on a plane.
Wow.
And, I just finished up an article. It'll come out in the next month or two with Men's Health Magazine. And it's all about stem cells and the clinic that I went to. And there's a lot of people that don't believe in it. There's a lot of people that are just not on board with that.
They're just uneducated.
They're not. And I explained to them that if there was somebody that was going to say that it didn't work, it was me, because at day 60, I still had pain. I still was not better than I was before I went. But something between day 60 and day 75 made a big turn for me. And I went from, did I waste my money, to this is getting better. And then by March, I was at 100 days of no pain. And now I go hammer down in the CrossFit gym, 3 to 6 days a week, and my knees are in the best shape they've been in my adult life. So I can't tell anybody that it will work for them or not. I can only say that for me, it was probably the best health decision I made besides losing the weight.
That's killer, dude. Well, the science is real, man, and it's worked for I know a whole lot of people that it's worked great for, Absolutely. So it's fantastic. Well, all right. So I've got here, you're down 80 pounds, right? So how close are you to your target?
So I got 40 to go.
Okay.
I'm trying to get down 125 total. At my peak, I was 305.
Wow.
And I was around 300 for the bulk of my adult life. And it changed really the week that I turned 40. And a couple things happened just right in a row. The goal in our house, we were trying to have a net worth of at least $1 million before I turned 40. And we met that 2 weeks before I turned 40.
Wow.
The day before I turned 40, I was on the Dave Ramsey show on their Millionaire Hour. And I was also teaching my team. I was down at City Club, had all them down there. So I left. I didn't tell them where I was going. Went down to Ramsey Studios, did that piece.
Place is incredible, right?
It's fantastic. Then came back, and when I walked in the room, two things happened. One, I just walked in like normal. About 10 seconds later, they sent me the pictures from where I had just come from the studio. And I was sick at just how sick, old, and fat I looked.
I had that moment too.
And it sucked all the life out of me. And here you are, you're leading your team, right? And in that moment, I look up and I had this realization in that I looked around the room and the majority of them were overweight. I'm thinking, I'm with these people 60 hours a week, every week. I'm leading them in the wrong direction. And then the thing that put it over the limit was, I go downstairs, the meeting's over. I put on my game face and led the meeting. I get downstairs, get in the car, and as the front wheels are pulling out on Church Street, the most liked post from Facebook popped up, and it was my son eating a donut. I pulled over and cried. I mean,
gotcha.
We're talking about a 40-year-old or about to be 40-year-old man sitting in his car crying. And it was because I realized that I was leading everybody in my life in the wrong direction because this was one of those things in my life I had not fixed. And so over the next several months, I lost about 70 pounds.
Wow.
And then, kind of hung out in that 70 to 80 range for 6 years. So I've kept it off. But the reason that I got crazy about it and I'm trying to get to 180 pounds is because one of your reels.
Okay.
One of your reels popped up one day, and it was you talking about, one of the guests talked about getting all the way to the goal. Don't get 80% of the way there. When you feel good and you're kind of getting comfortable and you're in the zone, go all the way to the goal.
Good enough.
Yeah, it was the good enough reel.
It's a disease.
It's a disease, and I think that has been the problem in my health journey this whole time. And so back the last week of June, I decided I'm going to 180 pounds. Now, I haven't been 180 pounds since I was 12 years old.
That's unreal.
So that's my Christmas present to my family and myself. Is the goal is to get to 180 within 180 days, which would be Christmas Day.
So. All right, so let me pause right there for just a moment. Folks, we're hanging out with the backwards bowler, Jim Cripps. He's also the host of the Charge Forward podcast. Keep up with him online. Check out the URL, chargeforwardsolutions.com/podcast. Check him out on Instagram at Charge Forward Podcast. Keep up with old Jim on Facebook as the Charge Forward Podcast, and also on Instagram at Jim_Cripps. That's with 2 P's, right? So all that's in the show notes right there. So hey, off camera, we got 2 producers today, 2 amazing gentlemen over here in Jensen, and a previous guest, Chris Mercado. So I'm going to ask you guys, all right, towards the end. You're off camera, and we'll have to speak a little louder so they can kind of hear, but I want you guys to come up with one question for old Jim in regards to bowling backwards that we didn't cover, or his weight loss, something like that. Maybe like, because I'm going to ask him next on the weight loss journey. I'm like, dude, like how much has that affected like your family? Just like For me, it made all my relationships better. I felt better. Just more pleasant to be around.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, really? I don't know, Nick, But all right. So one question, just be thinking about it. You got a few minutes. All right. So, Jim, first of all, before we get off that weight loss stuff, seriously, for me, it was always like it got good enough. Okay. And one day, I realized it was, my wife and I had a conversation, and when you're blessed and you become financially stable, or better than stable, when you're really, really comfortable, that's a disease. And there was a couple years. I actually, on your podcast, I was a guest on your podcast. I said 2023 was the first year that my wife and I had made more money working than not. It was actually 2022. I misspoke on that, right? So that meant that 2022 was a great year, but 2023, at the end of 23, we looked up and we were in the exact same spot as we were at the end of 2022. And it's a great spot, but that's not the deal we made, right? And then in 2024, halfway through the year, we're still trending to be in the same spot again, right? So there was something that happened in 2023, and we've rolled it into 2024. It was like, you know what? I'm actually going to do what I said I was going to do all the way. And now all of a sudden I had breakthroughs, and I had that breakthrough in my faith first, and that spilled over into everything else. But now it spilled over into business, relationships. The one place I got to get better at is with friends. I still haven't figured out how to make time for friends again, because I'm always just doing something with kids or work to grow. But it changed the rest of my relationships. Talk to me a little bit about how that's for me in business. It was literally like the breakthrough that was necessary. Talk to me about your breakthrough in business and family and whatnot.
Well, I think, a lot of people, they ask the question of, how do you get balance in all of that? And I think it's either a myth or a misunderstanding. And it kind of depends on what your experience is with that. And, I think what it is, it's almost like somebody stretching the dough at a pizza place.
Right.
If I just stretch all at once, it's going to break. Right? It's not meant to do that. You're constantly working on it. And so instead of this circle, I think it's constantly kind of out of shape, and you're trying to put it in shape.
Yeah.
But it's got to be intentional. Because if I just put my head down and I'm just hammering away at work, well, then I'm a break. Something's got to break. But if I'm constantly conscious of where everything's at, there's going to be times I'm going to work more. There's going to be times that I've got to focus more on health. There's going to be times I got to dive into my family.
Yeah.
There are times where you've got to focus on one more heavily than anywhere else, but it's ratios, and it's time. In that, if I dive deep in over here, how much does it affect everything else?
That's
and
right.
So you're constantly kind of playing that tug of war with yourself as well as all the situations, and then nobody else is perfect either. They're always pulling as well, and so you're trying to just keep those in line and be intentional about it. My health has been the same way. I had to be intentional about it. And I think the big breakthrough for me is I was always trying to lose weight. I was always trying to be healthier, but I never said I'm going to get to this weight by this date, and this is how I'm going to do it.
That's right.
And that was the game changer for me. And I've been at CrossFit now for a year and a half, even before I went to go get my knees fixed. But now people are starting to notice. And it's because I've been intentional about doing the other things outside of the gym to fix it.
So when you were here, it's been a year and a half, maybe. See, it's been about almost 100 episodes, so 2 years really. 2 years since that came out. So a lot has been going on. So when you were here last time, the world records and the perfect game backwards was pretty semi-new, right?
Yeah, it was fresh.
It was very fresh. Folks, check it out. This is from February 2023. If you're watching with us, he's on the cover of Bowler's Journal magazine, which is unbelievable. They were doing how long is the spread again, Jim?
I think it's 9 pages.
9 pages in the cover. But look this is the unbelievable. It's a great photo. How many takes did it take to get that? It's a great photo.
Well, I was very fortunate in that when they reached out and they were looking for a photographer, the main photographer that they had dealt with in the past here in Nashville was not available. And a guy that I went to high school with did all the work for Vanderbilt for years for all their sports programs. So Sean Sin, he's a rock star behind the camera and editing all the things. And he does everything for, I believe it's Ole Miss now, as well as a couple other colleges. And he was available. And I said, guys, if he's available, that's who I want to shoot this. I had no idea I was getting the cover. I didn't know there were going to be multiple pictures. Our mission was just, hey, we got to do something good enough that if there's multiple people, multiple things in the running, I want them to pick mine.
Mm-hmm.
And the cover is something I never thought would ever actually happen. Because in the bowling world, people either love me or they hate me. There's really nothing in between.
Sure, I can see that.
Yeah, and I've been called a mockery to the sport. And then on the other end of it, a lot of them have called me a great ambassador to the sport. And that's really where I hang my hat is I look at things as, is this good for bowling or not? Now that I have a platform, or sometimes I'm in the news, I try to make sure that, I may have been the attention grabber, but how do we reposition it so that it is good for bowling? Mm-hmm. And I really never thought they would put me on the cover. I thought it would be too controversial. And so I didn't know I was on the cover until the day it came out.
Wow. And you can check it out at bowlersjournal.com.
Absolutely.
It's such a great photo, like the facial expression and everything. It captures everything. It's perfect, man. It's fantastic. So congratulations on that. That's very, very cool. So what else in the world of bowling? So I've got here that you did something with Disney. Fun fact, I have a jersey wall at home where there's everybody from Mickey Mantle to Blaine Bishop to, just some of the greatest in football and baseball. And bowling, I've got a jersey framed with of Mr. Jim Cripps, and it's autographed, and it's on the wall at home, and I'm so proud of it, man. So fun fact about that. Talk to me about what you did with Disney.
So Disney was opening their first Disney bowling center, and it was in Orlando. It was the old Tower Records building, and it being in Disney, it needed to be over the top. And so Splitsville was opening up, and they put a lot of time, effort. They were methodical about the theme and all the things. And I got a phone call, and it was the owners asking if I'd come down and be the entertainment for the grand opening. And we were going to be on 75 plus TV channels around the world. Furthest one, I believe, was from Australia, New Zealand. And it was me and Johnny Petraglia. And so Johnny's a Hall of Famer. I mean, anybody that knows anything about bowling knows Johnny. And I had never bowled with him before. I'd been in with a lot of Hall of Famers. I didn't know how he was going to react to it, those kind of things. But Johnny likes to put on a show. And so we had a great time. And you just went lane to lane to lane to lane with a new crew and a new crew and a new crew. And you got one shot. And so it was on us to make sure that it was a good one. Mm-hmm. And so it was a lot of fun.
Dude, that's awesome. Anytime you get to work for one of the biggest companies and greatest companies on earth, like a Disney, that's always a good time, man. That's really cool. Oh
yeah. Well, and anytime you can put bowling on display for the world, I mean, that's just a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. So, all right. So you've got you're one of, I think I said this when I was a guest on your show. You're one of those guys that has the perfect storm of, you're just such a positive and fun person to be around. However, I would never want to be on the other side of the field playing against you, because I feel like there's Tim Corbin kind of has those attributes, which is, I think it's the greatest attributes as an athlete and a coach you can have. It's when it's time to compete and the rules of engagements are clearly laid out. I would say that you're a dog out there, baby. You're going to do whatever it takes, right, to accomplish a mission. But as soon as that's over with, then it becomes about, being. I would call you a good guy, not a nice guy, right? Which is what you want to be. A nice guy tells people what they want to hear. A good guy's going to tell them the truth. You know what I'm saying? So you just have that attributes about you, man. What would you say? How do you it's hard to do that. It's hard to want to compete and be so ferocious when it's time, but at the same time be able to just make everybody feel so good. What would you attribute to that?
Well, a friend of mine shared with me this kind of tip about raising kids. He and his son both raced. And I made a joke one time about him letting his son win. And he said, he got real serious. And he said, I will never let him win.
Derek Jeter's dad wouldn't let him win either.
And because he got so serious, I asked a couple of questions. And he goes, Jim, if I slow up to let him win, somebody else passes us both and he learned nothing except how to lose. And so, Jason Walford, this one came from you, brother. And so one of the things that we did when I had a big team, 500 plus people, and that meant we had a lot of people in leadership, And we would take them every time we had a leadership meeting. We tried to incorporate some event. A lot of times it was go-kart racing. Well, back then I was 280 to 300 pounds. And so there's no reason that anybody racing go-karts should have been able to beat me. And I won every single time we went. And they were racing hard. But it was on purpose because it would wake them up. They because you'd always have a few new managers, that kind of thing. And people talk about, oh, Jim's going to beat you. And I would put it back on them and I'd say, okay, so how many of you looked up how the track played? How many of you looked up how to adjust your seat, how to adjust the steering wheel, how to adjust the pedals? Every once in a while somebody would raise their hand, but nobody raised their hand on all of them. I said, I researched how to beat you so that you could see what was possible. And I think that's just how you have to play it in life. If you're going to inspire people, you have to do something worth aspiring to. And that's in every part of your life, whether that's your faith, whether that's your business, whether that's your marriage, whether that's how you raise your kids. You have to set the bar and you can't ease up. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be friendly. That doesn't mean that once the competition's over that we're friends. But I will say it does limit some of the things that I do in that I will not box because I can't turn that switch off.
Right.
We can't be punching each other in the face and then 5 minutes later we're friends. I can't. I know that about myself. I can't turn that switch off.
Got it.
And so I'm intentional when we win. I'm not a golfer, but there's plenty of people out there that will attest to when we go to Topgolf, Jim's playing to win.
Yeah.
And I know it's a different game, but when we got a sport, when we're keeping score, and I firmly believe in keeping score.
Yeah.
And one of my hallmarks, one of the things that I'll tell anybody is performance matters.
I couldn't agree more. And it's again, this goes back to the way you do anything is the way you do everything, right? So
that's right.
I want to thank all of our loyal fans that spread across all 50 states and 14 different countries. It's absolutely amazing. Folks, help us keep spreading the word, right? Share your favorite episodes with friends and make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the Hitstreak on all digital platforms. Thanks again, and we look forward to more. The preparation, all right? So we're going to start to move the transition into before we even talk about all the business stuff, everything else. Your one of your missions is to kind of tie your two worlds together, which are polar opposites.
They are,
right. So nothing like, all right. So I'm gonna get fried on. I'm gonna say it anyways.
Yep.
I'm gonna say it anyway. So bowlers wouldn't be known as the most fit, disciplined people out there. As a matter of fact, would you like bowling would be more of a blue collar sport, right? It's affordable. It's a lot of fun, and really anybody can do it. You can take your grandparents can take their grandkids.
That's right.
There's a lot of fun ways to do it. Okay, but your business is anything but blue collar. You know what I'm saying? So it's polar opposites. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit how you're wanting to bridge that gap.
Well, I've been trying to do it for a long time, and this goes back 20 years, and when I was in a totally different business. And I never will forget, I was planning to do a promotion specifically geared toward bowlers. And one of the vice presidents said, well, bowlers are too low income. This is probably not a good fit. And I said, okay, how much do you think a bowler spends to bowl each week? And, they threw out, okay, $20. I said, well, your average bowler is going to bowl 3 to 4 nights a week. And it's going to cost them between $20 and $25 just for the lane fees, just for their dues. Plus, they're probably going to eat dinner there. It may be that their family's with them. Their family's eating dinner. So now we've spent $100. We've probably spent more like $200. Plus, each bowling ball that he carries in his bag, he's probably got between 4 and 6 of them. Each one of those was $250. So, and they're only going to be optimal for about 60 games. So you're talking about a new arsenal every year. And so when you really start adding up,
I didn't know that
bowling is not an inexpensive sport. And one of the big costs in the bowling world, if you're a proprietor, is your credit card expenses. And so I'm working with some bowling centers now to see if we can help them save some money or optimize their situation so that they can keep some more of that in house, so they can reinvest it. Some of your bowling centers that are what we call fun centers. they're charging big money per hour for people to bowl for fun. They don't usually have leagues. Your league centers, every penny counts because, they're not charging in most cases, they're not charging the crazy inflated prices like some of your fun centers.
Right.
And these people are doing it every week, multiple times a week, plus they're practicing and they're spending money in the pro shop. So it's expensive. And anytime you can help a proprietor save some money, either so that they can take a little more money home or they can reinvest in their product, it's good for bowling. And so I'm constantly trying to figure out how is what I'm doing, can I tie it back into bowling? Because it kind of goes back to that work-life balance, is if I'm tying it back in, well, then I'm more passionate about it.
Yeah.
So that's just part of my process. It's not for everybody, but I like tying them all in together. Plus, it gives me another reason to go to a bowling center or talk to a bowler. We're very fortunate here in Middle Tennessee, and that Bob Learn, one of the top coaches in the world, just moved back to Columbia, Tennessee.
Okay.
And is going to be working here in Middle Tennessee again. They're opening a training center, and right now, in fact, while we're recording this, he is the coach for Team USA.
Wow. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. So you said something there that I didn't know.
Yeah.
All right. So I understood, just like as a baseball player, I had different model bats for the different type of pitcher that I would be facing. Right. And I understood that bowlers, the average bowler or the below average bowler like me finds a ball that feels good, and I use that for every shot for the entire game. Right. So fun, and I said this on your episode too. I bowled like a 197 the other day, right? But it took me 3 games. You just had to added them all up. But I did not know. So can I blame it on the bowling ball? How often? So a bowling ball lasts 60 or so uses before. What happens with it? Does it lose some of its like hardness? Like what is it that goes away in a ball? And then are these bowling alleys changing them out? Because that may be my problem. I'm blaming that.
Well, when you go into a bowling alley and you just pick up a ball off the rack, that's going to be a plastic or polyester ball, and it's not made to absorb oil.
Okay.
The high performance balls, which anybody that is a bowler is going to have. Now, they may have a plastic ball as well in order to throw it corner pins so the ball just goes dead straight. But you're going to have high performance balls in your bag, which are designed by ball designers. In fact, one of the best ball designers that has ever walked the earth is Ron Hickland, who owns CTD. He'll be on the podcast before too long.
That's what I'm talking about.
And, he was passionate at like 12 years old. He decided he wanted to be a ball designer. We're talking about a job. There's 6 or 8 in the world at that time. And this kid decides that's what I want to do. Now he goes to college exactly for that. And he becomes a ball designer. And then just through, Brunswick and some other companies kind of acquiring the other bowling companies. So Ebonite and Hammers, who he was designing for. And then that was eventually bought by Brunswick. So Brunswick now owns most of the bowling manufacturers worldwide, most of the brands.
I didn't know there was any other ones, as a matter of fact.
Right. There are a few more out there, but, Brunswick is by far the biggest. And, the modern ball is very complex in that you have an outer shell. And probably the easiest way to describe it is different types of tires on a race car.
Okay.
And then, so you've got heavy oil conditions, so you want it to absorb a lot of oil fast so that it makes contact. If it's on the oil, it doesn't make contact with the lane to actually start to hook. And then on the inside, you just think it's round, but it's actually got a core that has different densities and different shapes that affects the way the ball reacts as it spins down the lane, much like a baseball and the threads. The threads are and how you release it.
That's right.
So oddly enough, there are quite a few former pitchers that end up on the senior tour because they understand ball motion, and 2, they can bowl a lot longer than they can pitch, and then 3, it's almost exactly. I mean, within I think 3 inches of the same distance from the mound to the plate as it is from the foul line to the pins.
Interesting.
So
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
We gotta figure this out, fellas. I need to see a bowling match between Jim and Mookie Betts.
Mookie's a great bowler.
He
really is. And he's got a charity event that his mom helps put on here once a year, it's a fantastic event.
Well, they need a bowling celebrity like you in it, don't they?
maybe this next year.
I'm going to throw that out there. Well, let's. So you've got your podcast is I would say it's semi new. You got a lot of episodes shot in the can. How many as we're airing this today? This is we you guys know we film somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks in advance on the Hitstreak usually, right? So let's say we're 4 to 6 weeks out from this hitting the presses when you're listening to it today. Mm-hmm. How many, as we're sitting here today, how many episodes have you dropped of the Charge Forward podcast so far?
So episode 4 comes out day after tomorrow.
Excellent.
And then we've got 8 in the can currently.
Beautiful.
So working on it.
Beautiful. It's fantastic, folks. You can find the Charge Forward podcast on pretty much all podcasting RSS platforms as well as on YouTube, right?
Absolutely.
And which I like watching them. Some people like listening. I like to watch them. I listen to them sometimes, but I'm a visual guy.
Same here.
So talk to me a little bit about what's the Charge Forward podcast? What's the premise of it, and what are some of your goals for it?
Well, in my former life, growing a business from $6 million to a little over $100 million, I spent 12 years right at it, 4,321 days curating people. And I kind of look at it like every one of us, we're misfits. And there's no perfect person. There's nobody that's just the perfect shape, right? And where I got really good was taking these misshaped people, obviously metaphorically, and putting them together to do amazing things by kind of packaging up strengths so that everybody made each other better. Mm-hmm. And, after that company sold, I was trying to figure out what is it that I'm doing now? And one of the things that was missing, and I'm very thankful to you kind of helping me put this together, is I had become very accustomed to and really thrived on that teamwork or being around other people, that creative fusion that makes everybody better or that inspires new thought. Mm-hmm. And, in the merchant services credit card business, you're just not around that many people.
That's true.
And then on the coaching side, I'm really sitting down with my client, helping them grow their business. Occasionally, I'm working with their team, that type of thing, but I wasn't getting enough of it. Mm-hmm. And you were like, you got to do a podcast, man.
Oh, you're great at it. And I've seen it, and I was a guest on it, but you're a great interview.
Well, thank you.
Holy cow.
And you got a great studio, so it makes it really easy to get started and to jump in. And so my thing is, the spirit of the Charge Forward podcast is people that default to charge forward into the storm when other people give up. We are all going to hit adversity. We are all going to have that thing that hits us from left field that we didn't see coming. Mm-hmm. And some people default to victim mentality. They default to I can't or I shouldn't or that was my sign. And I'm not saying that there's not such thing as signs out there, but you have people that default to charge forward, that default to go, I'm supposed to do this. And, so all these people that we see every day, some of them have these amazing stories that would inspire people if they knew about it.
That's right.
And so my goal is to find as many of those people and share them with the world so that we have more and more. We're cultivating people that choose to charge forward because somebody else made them believe.
It's one of my favorite stories I've ever heard is, the difference between cattle and bison, if I'm not mistaken, and how, one runs away from the storm and one runs into the storm. And the one that runs into the storm spends the least amount of time in the storm because it crosses right through it, right? So it's, and I had a young lady on the podcast before, and she was I said, so she had been, an adult had taken advantage of her when she was a minor, and I referred to her on the show as a victim. Mm-hmm. She said, no, I'm a survivor. Mm-hmm. And the difference between a victim and a survivor is literally just how you perceive what happened to you and what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's unbelievably important. So that's a great little nugget that you gave those folks right there. So and it's funny too because I had a great. We're going to talk a lot about what you can do with data and targeting and so on and so forth, because you and your team are doing amazing things for me personally, which I'm grateful for. But I had a funny conversation with them the other day, and as the backwards bowler, they said, "Yeah, we really just feel like he needs a rebrand." Because actually, you build businesses backwards. You type in the destination in your GPS, and it tells you by working backwards from where you are to where you got to go to how to get there. They said that charge forward, that you should be charged backwards.
Yeah, right.
That was so funny.
Well, kind of on that same point, one of the things that I walk through with my clients is you should always be running your business as if you were going to sell it.
Yes.
And more often than not, when somebody hires me to coach them through their growth phase or to get ready to sell or whatever that looks like, my favorite outcome is when I come in to help get somebody ready to sell and they fall in love with the business all over again once we streamline it, once we get it ready to sell. Mm-hmm. Because now all of a sudden it doesn't have this weight anymore. It's right. Fun. They realize why they started the business to start with.
That's right.
And once you get them to understand they should always be running the business like that, then it gives the business new life.
I was told once, because we've launched a ton of businesses, and we were doing it all wrong, right? So even like when I started this podcast, the goal was, because of the relationship that we have with SiriusXM, is I want this podcast on SiriusXM. I've said it multiple times. I know you hear me, SiriusXM. Let's talk, right? So, but that was the goal of the podcast. Yeah. The goal of the businesses where we were messing up is I never planned on working until I put me in the ground, right? I had planned on working and retiring or selling the business or whatever it may be. So when you plan the business, you actually got to start with the exit, right? Did you just let it go out of business? Did you hand it to a child or leave it a second generation? Did you sell it and what was the purpose of that type thing? So you're spot on, and I think that's the number one biggest mistake amongst most business owners is they don't think about it. They actually don't know what the end is. Yeah. Right. They think about when they dream of the business being at its peak, and that's as far as they thought.
Well, I think for some of them, it's almost like making final arrangements for your funeral. Mm-hmm. Oh, if we do a will, kind of the same thing. They feel like if they talk about it, it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen.
That's right.
Businesses will eventually get sold, or they will eventually go out of business, or you will pass away, and what's going to happen with it?
Yep.
And if you kind of walk backwards from that, one of the things that happens, I'm not going to say frequently, but I get really excited when these pop up, is doctors. A lot of doctors just kind of own their job. Yeah. They started a practice because they didn't want to work for somebody else, and then when they get ready to retire, they think their client list is worth a lot of money.
That's right.
And it's not. A client list is worth very little in most businesses, especially in service businesses where it's a doctor or that person is the one servicing whatever that is. Yep. And so if I can get in with a doctor 3 to 5 years before their exit plan, then we can start to build. We can get other doctors in. They can start to hand off. And then all of a sudden, now they're running a practice that has doctors in it. And there again, a lot of times, now it's fun again. Yep. Now they're engaged. Now it's something they want to do long term again.
That's right.
And that's the fun part. I love it when somebody decides, nope, I can't see myself not running this business because now it has become something I enjoy again.
You have a knack for rediscovering the joy in things. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And it's again, like I just love being around you, man. Like I've never had a bad time when Jim Cripps is in the building. That's what I know.
That takes two of us, though.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm gonna give him one right there. All right, let me put on my eyes here so I can see a little bit. So, talk to me. So that we've got the Charge Forward podcast, okay, named after your business. So, folks, if you want to hear how he got so great at business, I highly suggest you go back to episode 62 and give that a re-listen because he talks about the whole story, even his exit, which wasn't a friendly one right. At that time. And that's what happens in relationships sometimes, right? They don't always end the exact way that you want for both parties. But since then, he's been a busy boy, right? So talk to me a little bit about Charge Forward Solutions.
Well, I what I did for so many years was coaching my team. And one of the best things I can tell business owners is quit playing telephone. You know, that game you played as a kid where, you know, you got 12 people on the line, you tell somebody, the first person something, and see what it gets turned into by the last person.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we were so successful is, and I remember the first time I did this, I was very nervous. Even though these were my team members, me getting in front of every single team member and telling them what we were going to do just seemed daunting until I did it. And then we picked up speed, and I realized that them hearing what we were going to do, how we were going to do it in person from me was powerful. And then when you layer in caring about your people. And so because we were in that room together, I would do, you know, batches of like 20 people, and I went to every region we were in. And so there's not too many people running a business that take 2.5 weeks out of their month every month to go and train every person in the company.
Right.
But for me, it was invaluable because then I could say, Nick, why do you come to work? And, you know, we're talking about, most people say something servicey like for money. No. What are you going to do with the money?
Yeah.
Why do you show up? What brings you to work on your day that, you know, everything has gone wrong?
Because income is the outcome, not the objective, right?
That's right. What are you going to do with that money? What are you going to do with what you get from coming here? And, you know, there were all kinds of things. You know, it could be that they were 19 years old and they want to buy a car. Great. It could be nobody in their family had ever owned a home.
Yeah.
And they wanted to buy a home, or they wanted to help their mom buy a home. And so it also made the team stronger, because when I hear your reason, I'm less likely to be gossipy or to not be empathetic to you as a person.
Right.
I'm also more likely to help you.
Yeah.
Because I know what your why is, and you may help me more because you know what my why is. So we become stronger.
That's right.
And you don't get that through the game of telephone. It just doesn't work. So if your company, you want to pick up speed, you want everybody to have the heart in the business the way you envisioned in the beginning, you got to go down and you got to go learn the people. You got to go have that conversation. They got to know who you are. And then you've got to live a life worth aspiring to.
Oh, man.
The Hitstreak is powered by our partners at HitLab Creative Studios. Whether it's launching your brand new podcast, rebranding your current podcast, or taking advantage of any of their other content packages specifically for your social media needs, the HitLab is a one-stop shop for you. Visit hitlabstudio.com for more.
Folks, we're talking about the ultimate form of leadership here, right? And I'm going to stay here for a minute, because this is, you are one of the most qualified people I've ever met to talk about this. So I'm going to make sure we spend enough time here. But basically something that's one of my favorite people and partners, Antoine Robinson. You met him for the first time in person yesterday, literally. Antoine is the master. I've learned so much from working with him, even though it's been not as long as most of my business relationships. He is the ultimate master of like, when you own something, you have equity in it, right? Well, you just described beautifully the importance of relationship equity, right? So as the business owner or the boss or somebody that's getting paid at a high level of that business based on its success, right? You are investing, getting equity in those relationships with those people, right? Because so you can truly measure and have a return. But again, you're in it for the people. You're a people-driven person, right? So relationship equity is key. There's two things that I believe at the end of the day, that a leader's job is but when it comes to communication. So a leader's job is to definitely set a standard and create a culture, make not a lot of everyday decisions, but make very few big decisions that affect all the other rest of the decisions that are made on an everyday basis, right? But when it comes to communication, the leaders are basically the best in the business are the best at automation and delegation. All right, so you just described how you became great at delegation. You learned the people who you were delegating to. Okay, talk to me about the automation part. Okay, because you're an expert at this.
Well, you've got to have great people, plain and simple, and they've got to be people that you can trust. And some of that actually starts with the conversations you have before you hire them. You know, a lot of people hire people they like or that are like them. and they never really ask the tough questions. Kind of like me being very competitive, and I want to win, even though we're going to be friends after.
Right.
Same thing. In the interview, you need to ask the tough questions. And somebody's going to have a beef with this one. I get it's a tough analogy, but I always look at team members as hitchhikers that are paying for gas. And the reason I say it like that is, let's just say I'm on I-40 in California.
Okay.
And I'm headed to Tennessee. And I'm picking up a hitchhiker. I know we don't pick up hitchhikers, but let's just say for this analogy, we did.
I mean, you buy a lottery ticket or, it's
Right, yeah. Playing the odds. So we're having a conversation. Where are you headed? It could be that it's just cold that day or it's windy and they want to get in the car. Kind of like, I just need a job because I need money. That's not a long-term relationship right there. That's not going to work.
Right.
It could be, if we ask enough questions and we ask them the right way, they're trying to get to Alaska. And this relationship works. If you look back 30, 40 years ago, and some narcissists still believe this is a one-way street and that you should be fortunate that I allowed you to work for me.
That's right.
Really, this is a two-way street if it's going to be a good one.
That's right.
Because they're investing. So look at it like they're paying for gas. And so if they're trying to go to Alaska and I'm going to Tennessee, the longer we go, the more frustrated they get, and rightfully so. And then I feel like, why are they frustrated? They should be grateful that they're riding in the car with me.
Yeah.
They're not trying to go the same place.
That's right.
And so if you look at that and you really dive into it from the beginning with that lens, you're going to ask your own questions, but use that lens because it also gives you a great ending. Because if I know you're headed to Texas and we start riding together in California, our goals are aligned all the way to Texas. But I also have an expectation that in Texas, you're going to get out. And so I'm not angry at you. I didn't have any false presumption that you're going to be in this car all the way. And a lot of business owners, they miss that piece because they get that person that does a great job and they say things like, well, why don't they care as much as I do? It's not their business.
That's right.
They're not supposed to.
That's right.
And if you get lucky and find one that gets close, treat them like gold.
That's right.
They will make you money. They will make your life easier. But start talking about what the end looks like early so that you know where your goals and their goals part ways. And you're gonna support them more than you would otherwise because you don't have that heartbreak. So you're just setting yourself up for that. Also, they feel good that you're going to be excited about when they part.
Yep.
I had a young man, this has been a long time ago, but he said, when I interviewed him, he said, Jim, this is going to be a temporary job for me. And of course, I'm working in an industry where it took us 6 months to get somebody trained. This guy was partially trained already because he worked for a competitor that was going out of business. And I said, well, what does that look like? And he goes, 29 months. And of course, I'm taken back. This, young kid says,
That's incredible.
29 months, what's going on? And I said, well, why do you say that? And he goes, well, because I'm going to become a famous music producer.
All right.
And like, okay, well, what's the 29 months for? He goes, well, that's how long it's going to take me to continue to improve my craft and save enough money to move to Las Vegas and do what I need to do. The whole reason that I know who Fetty Wap is because Pat Hundley produced the song that went up the charts. He did exactly that.
That's incredible. That just, the best in anything is the ones who can hit the smallest targets, right?
That's right.
And your GPS don't work if you type in a city. You got to give it a specific address in that city to get you there, right? So life's the same way. I want to stay right here for a minute because this is so important, man. Like, there's, if you're the business owner or the boss and you've got the people downline, let's just say, within the company, like, both of those people have a story that they're writing, a life that they're writing, that they'll tell their kids, that their grandkids will remember, and so on and so forth. And you're both a part of each other's journey. And it's hard as a task-driven person. That's something that I have to stop and remind myself on a regular basis. I'm so focused on what's got to get done, making sure we're on time. It's kind of like coaching baseball practice. We got 2 hours and we got to accomplish all these things. So sometimes you got to be able to know, what, this is important. We need to stay here for a minute and go over on our 20 minutes of whatever this drill is, and we'll just, borrow this from the time from somewhere else. Versus sometimes you got to say, hey, man, we ain't got it yet, but we got to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
right? But at the end of the day, the each player's there to accomplish certain things individually too, and that's the great. Like every team in the major leagues is full of great players. Yet the White Sox this year have only won like 30 games. Okay, and they've lost 80 or 90 or whatever it is. One of the worst seasons ever. Every player is good, right? But obviously, everybody is playing in different directions, right? They have not aligned on a single goal, right? Yeah. That's the hardest part when it comes to teams and business building, and even something, man. Like I'm just amazed. There's a couple of projects I got going on that are new. Okay, so it's fun going back to the drawing board on certain things. And every time, the more times I've done it, I'm more reminded of how hard it is to lead people. The amount of time and equity that you got to build in those people to build those relationships. And if you think about literally like it's an election year, the RNC and the DNC, and you look at these people, like even the people running for president, think about all the people that are right below them that they had to get on board, who then had to go find more and keep going all those different layers. And that person on top had to make sure that he's investing or she's investing the right amount of time into all those people to keep them all moving forward. Like starting a business is, folks, if you're starting a business so you have a job, I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Like you start a business to give other people jobs, to give other people opportunities, but eventually that's how you scale, and you're making money off something somebody else does. Yeah. So and you can solve more people's problems that way, right? So I'm just amazed at how hard it is to take something from scratch and get a whole bunch of people bought in on it. I mean, you know what I mean? And get them all moving in the same direction.
Well, I think one of the big pieces, and I think you do this really well, some people do it amazingly well, and some people completely miss the mark, is it's got to be centered around the mission and who you're serving. It's far easier to get somebody bought in to your mission that is, grabs your heart or is the reason you started this thing. You knew it wasn't going to be easy. If you start with the mission and you have people that are aligned with the mission, well, then that's a big piece of it. If people aren't bought in, or if you have, if it's a culture that is not inviting, or that kind of thing, you push a lot of great people off to start with. Most people, money's not enough,
right?
And people miss that. And I can give people, I don't want to say tips and tricks, but best practices on how to connect with people and get them to stay. But sometimes I hold back because I'm, this one, I almost don't want to give them this tool, right? Because it's too powerful. I will give you one that I think is fantastic when it's used correctly. And if it's used by the wrong person, people see through it in a heartbeat.
Okay.
And so if you care about the people on your team and they know that, you can take this one little piece and you can add years to how long people stay. Hire somebody part-time to jump on Facebook and see what your employees' kids are into, and send them birthday and Christmas presents.
Wow.
People don't leave companies that care about their family and take care of their family.
I agree.
And most places will go, oh, it's too expensive. We don't have the budget for that. Most companies, it costs them more than $10,000 every time they have to replace a seat. Think of how many birthday and Christmas presents you can send for one seat.
That's right.
And a lot of times it's the industries with the highest turnover that believe that false narrative.
Yeah.
The other thing that a lot of business leaders fall into is they allow this narrative to be created inside their company that doesn't serve them or anybody else. So let's just say we're all sitting down and a survey comes through. And I make a comment as a leader about somebody being bad at their job. Well, everybody in that leadership room takes me at my word. And then maybe something actually happens, or maybe this thing just keeps going. Like I just had a conversation with a company the other day. Their number one producer, they have this false narrative for. And it's just because somebody said it at one time. And it's just kind of gotten momentum.
Yeah.
And then I look at the guy on paper and his surveys are excellent. 2 out of like 75 are not excellent. But they read this one, and then he's their top salesperson. And he has more accounts than anybody else. And I'm looking at it going, guys, what are you doing? Like, you should be talking about the good things, not giving crazy weight. If I have 75 clients, I'll guarantee you, as awesome as I could possibly be, 2 of them are not going to like me.
Sure.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We'll reallocate that. But all too often we just get this thing going and we stay stuck in it.
Yeah.
When if we were really doing what we should do in leadership, we should stop that. That shouldn't even be a culture. Now, if we have a performance problem, absolutely we should handle that. But we shouldn't try to create this story that becomes something bigger than it is.
Dude, that is, I'm telling you, you're amazing at so many things. But like, I would encourage you, especially with your podcast. I learn something new every single time I talk to you about this. Like, for real, it's a. Not only is it a great reminder, but there's so many examples, and every time it's a different story. Every time it's a different story. There's a Kleenex down there too if you need one, baby.
I get choked up when I talk about this stuff.
I know. It's that's how authentic he is, right? So. I wanted to stay there for a minute because I've talked to you so many times about it, and I just think that you're a total, you're a wonderful subject matter expert and thought leader when it comes to this stuff, and I think that it's a shame that you're not on stages talking to corporations and their executives about this stuff. Not yet.
I will share. One of the things that at one time I used to hold back. And I had a business coach, Chris Weinberg, here in Nashville. And he said, Jim, you're big enough now. You're going to have to inspire people. And I would encourage anybody. Think of your story like you're telling your grandkids. And if you're not telling a story worth inspiring them with, write a different story. You have every single day you wake up and you get to decide, are you going to go closer to your goals or further away from them?
It's like a page. Every day's a page in the story, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is I had this moment kind of like of clarity, much like with my health. I was teaching my team there in person, and I found out that I had 2 team members that had their cars repossessed in the same week from our number 1 store.
Wow.
2 young men. One of them had a baby on the way, and the other one had a 2-year-old. And I was furious, not with them. I was furious that this happened on my watch. And so I got to thinking, I was like, they don't repossess your car a week after you're late.
Right. It's been a minute. I can tell you that from experience, unfortunately.
So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, these young men showed up at work wondering, is today the day? Is today the day I parked in the wrong place? Is today the day that I'm not going to pick my son up because I'm not going to be able to be there? Or is today the day that my wife goes into labor and I don't have a car to go take her to the hospital? And I decided right then I was going to teach how to use money and how to leverage money and how it works. And because these people didn't have this. And I say these people, I mean, most parents don't really teach their kids about money.
I agree.
And so I looked at it, I was like, I have to parent these kids. I say kids, they were all, in their 20s. But we started walking through that. And I started talking about how my wife and I paid off our house and how it didn't happen until we got intentional about it. And some people could see that as bragging. But I have now, as of about 3 weeks ago, I had my 11th former team member call me to tell me they paid off their house.
Dude.
And this guy was talking about, we had this conversation in 2009.
Wow.
So it took 15 years, but he picked up the phone and he called me and he goes, Jim, the house is paid for.
Man.
That changes people's lives. That changes the direction. It changes the decisions that they can make too.
Yeah, that's right.
And so inspire people to do great things. And if you're not doing something that is worth other people aspiring to, get about the business of doing it.
There's the episode title was right there. Lead, yeah. I'm making a note so I don't forget, right? But man, that's powerful. All right. So let's talk about the people, the businesses, the leaders, the folks that you coach. What you guys, some of the things you guys are doing at Charge Forward. Folk, what he's doing for me is like he's actually a data marketing expert. Like I've never really met anybody that he's told me things I just never heard before, and I've been in this business a long time, right? And he's been able to find so many holes that need filling on in my arsenal, right? So if you're not getting enough emails from old Nick, don't worry, they're coming, and they're going to be pertinent and relevant and something that you look forward to on a regular basis, maybe multiple times a day. I don't know, we'll get there, right? But talk to me a little bit about what you're doing for your coaches and like again how you're leveraging data and all those other things.
Well, I have some great clients, and to me, it's got to be win-win or no deal. We're either going to be able to get on the same page, and you truly do want to grow your business, or you want to exit your business, or you want to optimize your business, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. As long as we both get a good feel that this is going to be a good relationship, then I'm all in. Mm-hmm. And it's fantastic when you start seeing people fall in love with their business again.
Yep.
Even the ones that weren't planning on exiting, but they went from this stressed, you could see it written all over their face. And then you start to see things that happen. Like I have one client, and a key employee just put in their notice. Now it's for a great reason. She's got a great offer to go play ball and coach and get her master's, and that's fantastic. And if this had happened a year ago, it would have caused so much stress. And this person, even though she would have been happy for this team member, it would have been tough. Like she would have had to push through to show that gratitude and that joy. Mm-hmm. Picked up the phone, let me know. She was like, I already put out some feelers and we'll get it figured out. And, that's a totally different gear. That's a different mindset.
Right.
And so I love it when that happens. I had a client on the data side, and they wanted to be on the American Entrepreneur TV show that's on Bloomberg. Mm-hmm. And so we started working with them, and we started doing some marketing for them. And within 60 days, actually on day 59, they got the call.
Wow. From
Kevin Harrington's team. Hey, we want you to be on American Entrepreneur. And they were blown away.
Yeah.
She goes, how did you find us? And they told her, and it was a piece that we put out.
Wow.
And so you can get very strategic. And I've spent over $1 million on Facebook. Mm-hmm. That you get a lot of bumps, a lot of bruises, but then you also hit a stride. Hopefully, we did, and we could get $1.91 in return for every dollar we put out there. Mm-hmm. And so we treated it like a cash machine. And so you learn things, and obviously that's not a mold for everybody. Everybody's business is slightly different.
Sure.
But you pick up tricks where it's like, okay, I'm going to use this piece or this thing that we just figured out that we could do, or that, and that's what we're going to leverage for this client. And they're not all a home run like that just right out of the gate. But again, you got to be intentional about it, and you got to think differently than everybody else. Everybody else has got the same mousetrap. Well, yours has got to be bigger, better, badder, get more attention. Whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm. The Hitstreak is powered by Team Hyder. Team Hyder has been serving you for 11 years and has racked up over 20 national and local awards for excellence in all areas. When it comes to finding the right health plan, we need to consider your family's needs and your family's budget. That's what we do to serve you. To look further and to book an appointment, visit teamhyder.com.
All right, so as we get toward the end of this sucker here, it's almost Q&A time. And you guys locked and loaded over there. Y'all got one? You got one for them? All right. So, folks, we're hanging with the backwards bowler himself, Jim Cripps, the owner of Charge Forward Solutions. He's a business coach, the host of the Charge Forward podcast, and the Guinness World Record holder, and the only perfect game recorded shot bowled backwards. It's incredible. There's so many things we could just talk about. Again, I believe that your gift to the world is your leadership. When people ask me a lot when it comes to leadership, who do you think are the most people that have the most valuable input? Your name's I think you're on the Mount Rushmore of that, dude, for real. I mean that. I truly mean that. So, all right, let's see what the fellas came up with over here, right? So, Chris and Jensen are off camera. Who wants to go first? Anybody want to go first?
I'll go.
Go for it. All right. So Chris says you can hear him a little bit, right? But that's all right. So we'll get to it. Chris, go on ahead and ask Jim and tell Jim what your question is. And you can project loud if you can.
All right. Celebrities that you bowled with, or like a charity event or something, that who's the coolest or person that you...
Coolest. So, he's a celebrity in the bowling world. So I'll give a couple options here. So
repeat the question for me.
So the question was, what celebrity do I enjoy bowling with or had the most fun with? Mm-hmm. And there's a couple out there. So I mentioned him earlier in the podcast, Bob Learn. So my introductory kind of video into bowling, because I was not a bowler before I started bowling backwards. It was all off of a bet. Got to give a huge shout out to Mr. Randy Huth.
Yep.
That's the whole reason we're sitting here today.
That's right.
And one of the big pieces to why I became the backwards bowler. But my dad recorded a video, and it was all these Hall of Famers and top bowlers around the world. And the one that stuck out to me was Bob Learn.
Okay.
And never in a million years would I ever think that we would become friends and that we would bowl together. Or that, our wives would get along and we'd go to dinner together, those types of things. So, I've always had a great time. He really gave me the tough conversation that most people wouldn't have the first time I went out for a trick shot show. So 2007, I get a phone call. USBC used to put on this show called Bowl Fest. They'd invite a bunch of kids and a bunch of local people out right before the national tournament started, just to give it some hype and some buzz around it. And so they asked me to come and bowl. Mm-hmm. Well, I go out there, and I had been trying for years, let's say 7 years at that point, to be right by the game, meaning not make a mockery of the game. Mm-hmm. So I get out there, and this is a trick shot show, and I bowl backwards. So it was great. Everybody enjoyed it. And Bob said, "Well, what trick shots do you do?" And I said, I don't do trick shots. This is what I do. I'm serious about this. I bowl." And he goes, "Jim, every real bowler, every pro bowler that's worth his salt has trick shots." And man, that stung. I really felt out of place. Now, he didn't do that to be mean or anything like that, but I took that to heart. So the next year I came and I had trick shots. Okay. And then the next year I came fully loaded. And I was jumping ramps. It's the only reason I was ever on ESPN. Yeah. On ESPN, I threw a ball backwards, over a ramp, jumped 3 pins, and made a strike. And
that's insane, dude.
It's all because he wouldn't let me off the hook. And even that night, so this is Valentine's Day 2009 in Vegas with, an auditorium full of people watching. The first 3 trick shots were missed. And we're talking about by pros, and nobody comes to see trick shots tried. That's right. They come to see trick shots made. They want to be amazed.
Yeah, it'd be like if Dude Perfect never got it right.
That's right. And so Tom Clark, who's the director or the commissioner of the PBA, he goes, "No pressure, Jim, but you're up next, and we're losing them." Well, I had been practicing like crazy. So I hit shot after shot after shot, whether it was over the ramp, out of the towel. And I even got a little help from the bowling gods, because Bob Learn, Brian Voss, and myself threw 3 balls at one time on one lane to pick up 3 different pins. And I missed a pin. And my ball hit their ball in the back. It bounced back out on the lane, hit the pin, and they thought it was the greatest trick shot ever tried. And as we're turning around, Brian goes to give me a high five, and we miss, which it would have been funny in and of itself, but I get poked in the eye. So my eye's watering, and they go, "Well, we need one more trick shot. And I'm like, I'm out. I've done them all. I don't have anything else." And Bob goes, "I got it." Well, I'm thinking he's setting a trick shot up for himself. He puts 2 chairs in the lane, about 20 feet apart. So we got 20 feet chair, 20 feet chair, 20 feet pins. And he goes to sit down. I'm looking at him like, what are we doing here? And he goes, "You're throwing the ball." And so he and Dale Ballard, 2 Hall of Fame bowlers, are in these chairs. And I did the only thing that I knew to do, because I know that I thrive on stress. I turn around, Carmen Servino is the MC, and I ask him for the mic. And, of course, he looks at me like I am nuts. Mm-hmm. I grab the mic, and I address the crowd. I'm like, "Here's the thing. Nobody on this planet has ever tried this trick shot, because the only person that ever would have been me, and I haven't been this dumb till this point right here." I was like, "So here's the deal. If I hit either one of these guys, I want you to boo me out of the building. But if I go through their feet, don't hit either one of them, make a strike, I want you to yell and scream like you're at an Aerosmith concert.
Mm-hmm.
Throw the ball through, perfect strike, and they go nuts. They held up their end of the bargain.
That's awesome.
And it was fantastic.
That's awesome.
But I really enjoy bowling with Bob. He's a great guy. He's an ambassador for the sport. I mean, it wouldn't be where it is without him, and a lot of people like that. And then my other one is probably Aunt Chippy from Jimmy Kimmel. So when I was on the show, they kind of got her because she didn't know who I was. And they hired some actors in order to just bowl with me so that we just blended in. And they said, you got to bowl forward. And I don't bowl forward. In fact, that was the last time I threw a ball forward in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no, your whole game, you got to bowl forward. She can't know who you are. So I bowl forward. I shoot 112. They randomly select me out of the audience. And, she's blindsided. So I get up. First thing I do is I turn around and I go, I got to keep my eye on you. And so I'm facing her when I throw my first ball.
Yeah.
And she loses it. I shoot 210 live on TV. And for years, we kept in contact. Every once in a while, she'd call me or I'd call her and just, chat it up.
That's fantastic.
But, bowling has allowed me to travel the world and meet amazing people.
Absolutely.
Because if you go into a bowling center, there's really no reason for somebody to come up and talk to you.
That's right.
But when I go into a bowling center, it starts conversations.
That's
and then
right.
somebody's bold enough to come over and go, why do you do that?
That's right.
And then that allows the next person a little confidence, so they come over.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to meet amazing people from all walks of life because of this. So it's just one of those things that accidentally happened that then I caused to continue to happen on purpose. And it's just been one of the most fulfilling things in my life.
All right, Jensen, what you got, baby?
All right, I kind of got a two-parter. You kind of got into it, but I was curious why on earth you would even start bowling backwards. I didn't know if it was because you were really bad at bowling forwards or how it happened. And also, what is the worst thing you've accidentally hit when trying to bowl backwards?
Oh, that's a good question. All right, so the question is, he wants to preface the story behind how you started bowling backwards, right? And then the other one is have you ever really, when you were doing that, taken anything out that you shouldn't have?
That's right. So you were kind of on mark there with your question. I was a terrible bowler. I did not bowl as a kid. I'd only been in a bowling alley a handful of times in my life. And so we go bowling one night. The Pinnacle in Clarksville, my home center, is brand new. Randy Huth is the bar manager there.
Yep.
And some friends of mine were bowlers. And so we go out, we're bowling, and I ran a retail store just down the road. And so it turned out there were a couple of customers of mine that just happened to be the next table over. And then a few hours later, or a few minutes later, another table of customers of mine show up. So there's plenty of people that know who I am. And I am so terrible at bowling that everybody's giving me a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
And so just as a joke, I throw a ball behind me. And the very first ball is a strike. And I turn around just like, oh, cool. And they are all straight-faced mad. Of course, what are y'all mad about?
Mm-hmm.
You can't actually do that. Don't do that again. Well, what do you mean? I just did it. They're like, yeah, you couldn't do that. So they bet me any ball in the pro shop I couldn't shoot 150 that way. It took me 6 weeks. I shot 163. And then by then, I was better backward than I was forward. So just no reason to turn around. And Randy Huth used to give me a call right as they were shutting the bowling lanes down because the bar stayed open a little later.
Yep.
And I'd run up there, I'd get a lane, and I would bowl while it was just the bar. Of course, nobody paying attention to me out there. So I could practice kind of in peace without raising too much ruckus back then. And then, the things I've hit on a lane were there on purpose. So the best practice, and I can't tell somebody to do this in real life because most places you'd get kicked out. Fortunately, I had permission, but I practiced my chair shots. And so I would put a chair in the lane, and the goal was to bowl the whole game through the chair, pick up my pins, but not hit the chair. And it is a great exercise because you can't hide in a bowling center when you hit a chair.
Mm-hmm.
That thing flips down the lane. I mean, it sounds like the world's coming to an end. You're not going to hide.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was wonderful practice. And it's the only reason that I got as good as I did with my trick shots is because I had this barrier that was going to be embarrassing if I missed. And so one of my trips was to Japan, and the cameraman stood in the lane for 3 games. And I told him, I said, man, this was the first night we met. So I fly 15.
Trust is earned, man. Come on.
Well, they had bought some footage, and about 3 months later, I get a phone call, and they want me to fly to Japan. And I said, what is this for? And they said, we're putting together a show that is just the top 10 clips of all time, and we've been having this show 10 years. And in that short period of time, mine climbed to one of the top 10 clips of their entire show of the 10 years.
Wow.
And so I get over there, I fly 15 hours, I take a 2-hour cab ride to my hotel. It's now like 1:30 in the morning, so I haven't slept in 18 hours, and well, longer than that probably. And the phone rings, and they're ready to go bowling at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so we get up, we go to the bowling center, and he records just a couple frames, and then he goes, I need a different shot. That's what my translator told me. And so he goes out and stands in the lane, moves the chair, and he stands there. And so I go out there with my translator, and I'm like, hey, let him know that if I miss, it breaks his leg. There's no way around it. He won't be, especially looking through that lens, there's no way for him to move. And she basically translated back that there is an associated risk in shooting television in Japan, and this is part of it.
Wow.
Okay. So I bowled 3 whole games through his feet, and he didn't move. I mean, just nerves of steel. And then when we went to, when we were doing it live, all the people in that video, if you watch the one Backwards Bowler in Japan, all the people in that video are their movie stars. They're like our Tom Cruise and George Clooney and all that. And they did not tell the guy that was going to be sitting in that seat I was going to throw a bowling ball at him, much less that I was going to throw a bowling ball at him without looking.
Wow.
And, you know, so his reaction is 100% real. And the clip right before that, the guy went to the hospital. The actor, the celebrity, got hurt and went straight to the hospital. And so he's up next with me throwing a ball at him.
Wow.
And so, again, it's afforded me this amazing, fun story to share with people that almost sounds made up.
That's awesome, dude.
You know.
Well, hey, man, life's a gift, and I would say squeeze every drop you can get out of it, right?
That's right. We got one trip on this.
That's
right.
fantastic. Well, fellas, thanks so much for your contributions to the show. Those were fantastic questions. That was really, really good. Jim, any final thoughts as we bring this sucker to a close?
You know, one of the things we didn't dive into, which I know is big for you, it is for me too, is family. And I will tell you that when I was running that big company in Nashville, I didn't have my dough stretched right. I was one-sided. I was working way too much. Not that you don't have moments like that, but I will tell you that to put it in perspective, and this was actually from a TikTok clip, is in those moments where you're trying to decide, you know, let's just say your family's aggravating, your kid's acting up, whatever. Imagine that you're 85 years old or 90 years old, whatever. It's your last day on this planet. And you can relive that moment. It puts it into new perspective. We will do amazing things for our family on purpose. But you can ignore them. You can do terrible things on accident. So spend that time on purpose. Enjoy being a dad. Enjoy being a mom. Enjoy being a leader. It's amazing.
I couldn't have said it any better, man.
The Hitstreak is powered by Rack Financial. When it comes to your credit card merchant processing, Rack Financial is efficient, reliable, and trusted. At the end of the day, when it comes to processing your credit card payments, they make it simple, the way it's supposed to be. Check out Rack Financial.
Folks, we're hanging with the backwards bowler himself, Jim Cripps, the owner of Charge Forward Solutions, business coach, host of the Charge Forward podcast, Guinness world record holder, and the only man or person, I should say these days, to ever bowl a perfect game backwards.
Yes, sir.
Incredible. Jim, thanks so much for the hang today, brother.
Thanks so much for having me back. It's a great show. I love the guests that you have on, and I'm honored to be in that few that have been on a second time.
Well, again, I learn so much from you on a regular basis. I owe it to my audience to make sure that we're sharing all that, not just through the outlet of me, but just bringing you back. So I have a handful of guests that I like to bring back on an annual basis, and you're in that club, brother. You are in that club. So I'm looking forward to the next time already. You know what I mean?
Same here. Thanks for having me out.
Absolutely, folks. Keep up with Jim online at chargeforwardsolutions.com/podcast, on Instagram at chargeforwardpodcast, and at Jim_Cripps, and on Facebook at Chargeforward Podcast. And tell me again, Jim, let's make sure, because you're killing it on YouTube. Make sure we get your YouTube in there.
So YouTube is at the Backwards Bowler.
There you go. YouTube is at the Backwards Bowler. That will be in the show notes. We'll make sure we get those there. Make a note for myself real quick, at Backwards Bowler. Awesome. Well, dude, again, thank you so much for the hang today.
Absolutely. Same here.
Folks, we've been hanging with Jim Cripps. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hit Streak. I am your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.